Across hundreds of planets, cultures rose and fell, and alliances shattered and reformed. The galaxy had become numb to bloodshed. The powerful preyed casually, cruelly on the weak. Empires were tightly controlled. Their rulers believed in their own superiority, and their crimes echoed only faintly across space unnoticed by those not directly impacted. But then, on a specific day, in a specific corner of space, something happened. Something that shattered the illusion. A signal flared. To life across the networks, the Pantheon Empire had taken control of all major communication channels across the galactic core. Media displays across the universe showed a foreboding hall rows upon rows of shackled human women kneeling under crimson lights. Their faces were still. Behind them stood massive, pallid enforcers, trembling with tension, energy weapons humming with anticipation. And then, figures in obsidian armor emerged. The scene lasted precisely 10 seconds, just long enough for confusion to take hold. And for anger to begin simmering. Then Emperor Vizier appeared, tall, cruel, and composed. 6 amused eyes glittering. He lifted his clawed hands in a dramatic gesture and declared, "Today marks the end of human arrogance." The words snarled from his throat, translated instantly into hundreds of languages. These weaklings. These creatures dared to oppose the Empire's authority. They had the audacity to demand equality, to speak of rights. Laughter echoed through the chamber. This was no mere announcement. This was a message. A lesson for any who dared oppose the Empire, but far away. Across countless star systems where people lived, worked, and still dreamed of the stars. The reaction was far from passive. As Vizier walked down the line, he growled, "Captives! 50,000 of your kind. Consider this a generous warning. A taste of what's to come." The first row fell before the enforcers even lifted their weapons. Heads jerked, jaws twitched, bodies slumped forward. The second row collapsed seconds later. Then the third. No screams. Just the cold, mechanical hum of death across the galaxies. Humanity watched in stunned disbelief. Governments fell silent. Soldiers clenched their weapons. Families wept. And then, from Earth came the response. Laughter. Not amusement. Not hysteria, something darker, the kind of laughter that fills the back of a bar before a brawl breaks out. The kind of laugh exchanged between outnumbered Marines before charging certain death on Mars. A grizzled engineer set down his wrench and whispered, "They're doomed." On Titan, a weapons tech cracked his knuckles and smiled, and on Earth, deep within a silent command room, Ambassador Ryan Killian replayed the footage. The coffee beside him was cold and unusual for a man who drank it nonstop. His aide had just finished briefing him when the broadcast interrupted everything. "What do we do?" she asked. Ryan stared at the screen. He had heard this question before. Every time a haughty species mistook humanity's patience for weakness. Mistook diplomacy for cowardice. He took a long breath. "They've already lost," he said. "They just don't know it yet." He tapped his communicator. "Get me the Galactic Federation." His smile was tight, not joyful. "Not warm. The Federation won't act, but they'll listen." He sipped his coffee and muttered, "And they'll understand one thing clearly. The Pantheon Empire is already dead." In the Federation Council chamber, an antiseptic monument to unity and progress, nervous murmurs filled the air. Diplomats from 100 species spoke in frantic whispers. Ryan Killian entered with the calm assurance of someone who had already won. He leaned into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Federation, 50,000 civilians were executed." In a live broadcast, the room froze. There's no debate to be had. No diplomacy to be done. Humanity has already made its decision. We're leaving, and this is just a courtesy. A slug-like ambassador from Lurin fidgeted uncomfortably. Ryan turned and said, "Let me be clear. You won't take direct action. You'll freeze some trade routes, issue some warnings, but we don't need you." A representative from Trainin clicked his mandibles, sneering, "Human, you're a threat." Ryan grinned. "Oh, that's the idea." He pressed a button on his datapad. Satellite images, fleet movements, ship deployments. "You call this a fight?" Ryan said. This is extermination." Luna's factories were already churning out warships. Cyber attacks had paralyzed the Pantheon's supply lines. 12 border outposts were offline before Ryan even stepped into the room. "We don't want reparations," Ryan said. "We don't want negotiations, we want them gone." And for the first time, the Federation began to understand. The Tanded Empire was bleeding, and Earth hadn't even fired a shot yet. Ryan leaned back. "Have you ever heard of Earth?" he asked. "We don't forget." His voice turned cold. "And we are coming." A frail alien diplomat stood. "I represent a world enslaved by the Pantheon for centuries. I support full military sanction." One by one, ambassadors followed suit. Ryan nodded. "Thank you." He stood. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a war to win." As Ryan left, humanity's campaign was already underway. No formal declarations. No delays, only precision. The Tand Empire, used to fear-based rule, never stood a chance. Internal revolts erupted. Slaves rose. Human weapons. With helpful tutorials titled, "So You Want to Overthrow Your Overlords? A Step-by-Step Guide," flooded rebel worlds. Empire loyalists defected. Files leaked. Atrocities exposed. One final act of desperation remained. Send a fleet. Crush Earth. They tried. They failed. A fleet of 20 ships arrived at a distant human colony, expecting surrender. They found silence, no signals, no life signs. No defenses. They entered, and the doors locked behind them. Commandos emerged from hidden tunnels, armor black, movements fluid, efficient, and deadly. The Pantheon had never fought humans on foot. They weren't ready. Genocidal fascists don't qualify for Geneva, Ryan said to his strategist. He barely looked up. Fair. Enough, the Empire's grip cracked. Not from Earth's might, but from within. In every corner of the Empire. Oppressed species fought back with human weapons, human tactics, and human courage. The Pantheon High Command panicked. Their networks collapsed. Automated defenses turned on them. When Ryan finally stood on the bridge of a human dreadnought, staring down at the Empire's capital, his communications officer nodded. "We're through their defenses." "Good," Ryan said. "Start the broadcast." Across every screen in the Pantheon homeworld, his face appeared. "Hey there," Ryan said casually, sipping his coffee. "Didn't expect this, did you? You ruled the galaxy. You live-streamed genocide. And now someone is sitting in your sky, enjoying a damn fine cup of coffee." He leaned in. "You lost. You just haven't accepted it yet. Your fleets are gone. Your cities are rioting. Your enemies are sharpening their knives. There will be no peace talks, no second chances. This is where your empire ends." The Emperor roared onto the broadcast. "You think you can threaten us? We will never bow to savages." Ryan didn't flinch. "You already have." And then the human fleet opened fire not on people, but on monuments, on statues, on symbols of dominance. The towers of tyranny crumbled into ash. And in the Emperor's eyes was fear. For the first time, the predator had become the prey. Centuries later, Ryan cocked his head slightly, still admiring the Emperor's silence. That was all he needed. He sighed, and took a slow sip of coffee. Above the Tanan homeworld, the sky was ablaze, flaming wreckage. Once the mighty fleet of the Empire fell in streaks through the atmosphere. Burning metal, shattered hulls. A storm of fire marking the final descent of an empire that should have surrendered days ago, but they didn't, even after their defenses collapsed. Even after their ships were crippled and their orbital stations captured, they refused to give up, deluded to the end. They had fallen back to their final bastion, a stronghold at the heart of their capital, and there, on the bridge of HFY, terrifying human dreadnought designed to withstand planetary sieges, stood Ryan Killian, staring at the holographic battlefield map. Frustration simmered just beneath his unreadable face. The war was already won. The Pantheon armies were barely functioning. Commanders had shut off their ships. Supplies were running low, but still, they held on. "They always do this," Ryan muttered. Massaging his temple, across from him, intelligence officer Cal Reyes stood with arms crossed. "Autocracies are hard to kill." Ryan turned to the fleet, voice low and bitter. "Some people Would rather burn their house down than let anyone else take it. How long until we breach the planetary shields? He asked the commander. The man hesitated. They're using a decentralized grid. Every time we take down a node, another kicks in. Ryan tapped his fingers. It won't hold forever. But they're buying time. Time for what? Reyes asked. They have no fleet, no reinforcements, no allies. What's their endgame? We intercepted some last-minute coms before they blacked out, Reyes said. Scattered. But one phrase keeps repeating. Project Revenant. Ryan's eyes narrowed, his jaw tensed. He'd spent most of his life navigating political threats, but war had its own rhythm. People fought for greed, for faith, or for despair. The pantheons had already lost their greed. There was nothing left to rule. They had lost their faith when their gods failed them. Despair. That was the last and most dangerous motive of all. Deploy. The drop teams, Ryan ordered. They won't surrender. We're bringing the fight to their doorstep. An hour later, human drop pods tore through the sky like meteors. The capital city's remaining defenses buckled. The spires that once stood proud now lay in ruins. Smoke and fire pouring from collapsed bunkers. Ryan's pod struck the earth with bone-rattling force. The doors burst open. His armor locked in place. Rifle ready, he stepped out into a quiet city. Too quiet, the streets were dead, cracked, smoldering. Something felt wrong. Reyes' voice crackled in his cum. Ryan, we've confirmed it. Project Revenant. It's not a weapon, Ryan's eyes narrowed. What is it then? Her voice was tight. They're transforming themselves. Movement flickered in the shadows ahead, not tanks. Not soldiers. But figures staggering, twitching, unnatural. At first, they looked like civilians, but their skin was gray and translucent.